Now it's Scano, and I'm here with Max Redeye. What's up, man?
Hey, how's it going, man? It's good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. Max, I've known Max since high school. I don't know, middle school. It's been a long time, man.
Yeah. I think it was high school. I was,
Yeah.
I think when I moved back, we met, and then
Yeah.
after high school, we started kind of interacting more, and
Right.
I've been kind of following you from a distance on Facebook for the last decade. So it's
Yeah.
it's good to see you again. I haven't
Yeah,
seen
definitely,
you in a few
man.
years. We haven't
Yeah.
had a chance to sit down and catch up.
Right,
So
right.
the interlude to this was nice to get a chance to talk to you again and
Yeah.
see what's been going on, man.
Definitely. What you been up to since high school?
Well, since high school, a whole lot of nothing for a
Right.
few years there. I was kind of trying to find my way and,
Right.
causing trouble and, just living the res life, man, until about, I think 22 or 23. I decided I needed to try at least to go to college
Yeah.
and see if it was, a good fit for me. And, I wound up starting at ECC. Well, first I
remember we had a class together at ACC.
Yeah. Yeah. So I started out at community college, man, and went there for about a year and a half. Was just about to go into my last semester, and, I basically was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to apply to a university and see if I can get in. And I had read on the internet that if you apply for admission after the fall break or after the winter break, you're more likely to get in.
Oh, really?
So I did that, and luckily I got into Syracuse University, where I wound up getting a bachelor's degree in political science.
Nice.
And then came home after that and wound up getting a job.
What did you want to do at that point? Like, did you already know you wanted to become a lawyer, or what did you plan to do after that?
So I think I've known for a long time that I wanted to be a lawyer, but I never really saw a path towards it until I actually was accepted into a university, and,
Right.
and I said, hey, maybe I could do something like this. But no, in undergrad, actually, I was wanting to be a lobbyist for tribes,
Yeah.
anybody who would hire me.
Right.
Right. So I wouldn't have been picky at that point, but it just never really I didn't know anybody. I was afraid to go down to DC and just show up and say, give me a job.
Right.
So I wound up coming home, and probably I think a day after I got home, I got a job as a salesman for a company down in Pennsylvania. Went down there and worked for about a year, maybe a little bit more, just doing sales. I didn't know anything about sales, but I learned pretty quickly. Was pretty good at it. And while I was doing sales, I was kind of like, well, what am I doing with my degree? I didn't need to go to
Right.
go to school to be a salesman. So, like, am I ever going to use my degree? And luckily, my mom was kind of like, you should apply to graduate school. You should try to go for an MBA or a JD or something. And I just again, kind of on a whim, just was like, hey, I'll go take the LSAT. And if I'm meant to be in law school, I'll do well on it. And I wound up actually scoring high enough to where I felt like I could get into a law program somewhere. My mom is down in New Mexico in Albuquerque, and she was like, hey, they've got a great Indian law program down here. Why don't you apply here and check it out and see if it's a good fit for you? And that's, exactly what I did. So my mom was actually, the one kind of pushing me, because I don't think without that, or I think without that push from my mother, I would have kind of probably just, been doing something, around here. And
You'd still be sales, right?
Yeah, probably, right? Like, it was one of those things where the money was pretty good. I liked my job. I didn't have too many complaints, but I kind of wanted to do something a little bit more meaningful in my mind.
Right.
Not to
Absolutely.
say that you can't find meaning in that, but for me, it was, I want to find a way to give back to the nation, to
Right.
Indian people in general. And the law has always kind of appealed to me in that sense because, you can reach, you can impact all of Indian country if you get the right case.
Right.
If you litigate the right case, you can have profound impacts across Indian country for all tribes. And so that was something that, I was really drawn to in terms of selecting the law as my career. And then the fact that New Mexico had a very good Indian law program. They have great teachers down there was, the selling point for me. So I applied, got in, and basically told my boss, like, hey, I appreciate everything you've done for me, but I got into law school and I'm going to go down to New Mexico and enjoy the summer before I start school again. And, my boss was very understanding. She was a great boss. And so, she wished me well. She did everything she could for me to send me off right. And, I went down there and just basically fell in love with the legal profession. I may not have been a scholar, so to speak.
Right.
I was, I was always
You're a
more
valedictorian, right?
Yeah. I actually did win the award for being the top of. I won the award for excellence in Indian law, which is
nice.
usually given out to one of the top students in the class. I don't know if I was necessarily the top native student in my class, but I think I was somewhere around there to have won the award. So. But I made a lot of great friends. I met a lot of people who are really passionate about Indian law, and a lot of my classmates are now on to doing big things in Indian country. So it's been cool to see, and I've watched those people from afar, and I'm just they kind of motivate me because I'm always wondering, like, well, what can I do next for Indian country? Like, what is the natural progression of my career, or what is my career trajectory, and how can I give back to Indian country? Because I think it's important that, we get an education, but we come home and we help our own.
Absolutely.
Or any other Indian tribe. It doesn't necessarily have to be your own, but, just helping Indian country in general because we need it. And so that's really what, I've been up to, and a 20-minute speech about it, and I'm sorry to drone on about it, but it's something I feel passionate about.
Definitely. And it shows like how you made your progression, like to come back around to help your people, so to speak. You have this Native American Legal Assistance Clinic.
Yeah.
What is that?
So the Native American Legal Assistance Clinic is a partnership between the Volunteer Lawyers Project for Erie County. It's they do legal aid for low-income individuals.
Okay.
And
what kind of legal aid are we talking about? Like,
so if anybody has a legal issue, like I don't know, landlord-tenant dispute, we see questions about I got this notice in the mail. How do I respond to it? It's not necessarily the biggest cases, it's individual problems, and people don't know where to turn.
Right.
So they go to these, or they don't have the resources to hire an attorney to tell them what to do. So they'll go to these legal aid clinics or legal assistance clinics and get some advice. And sometimes they can get representation.
I've heard of those clinics coming here before on territory a couple times.
Yeah. And I think the Erie County Bar was actually working with like our elders for like estate planning and things like that. And they were doing that either at a discounted rate. I don't know the specifics, but I know that one of those legal aid societies was on reservation. And so long story short, it was a partnership between Volunteer Lawyers Project, the firm I work for, Lippis Mathias Wexler Friedman LLP, and the Native American Community Services. And so each partner plays a role. All I did was kind of bring everybody together because I was looking as soon as I started working for the firm, I was living in, I moved to Buffalo. So I was like, what can I get involved in here? And I had been asked to do the Lawyer of the Day program. And it was really just you go sit at a booth and, you know, people come up to you and you counsel them on their problems.
Right.
And so I was like, well, is there anything for Native Americans here? And there wasn't. So I had this idea to, hey, let's try to start that, not knowing how daunting of a task it was.
Right.
But, you know, I had a good friend, he's a partner at the firm, and he just, you know, he said, hey, I know the guy who is the director of VLP. I can put you in touch with him. He can give you some tips on how to start this. You know, you're going to need insurance. You're going to need, you know, all these different things. And so I went and met with him. His name's Bob Alardo at VLP. And, he was very enthusiastic about it. He thought it was a good idea. And initially he said, look, we don't have the funding, but I'll help you start it. I'll give you all the advice you need. He was more than willing to help out in that. And so I was like, great, I can take it from here. I'll just need some advice or, point me in the right direction and I can start moving. And he actually called me or emailed me the next day and he was like, hey, Lee, and so sorry about this, but my government name is Lee Redeye. Right. So Max is my nickname on the res. It's my middle name, but that's what everybody on the res calls me.
That's all I've ever known.
Yeah. So just when I'm speaking, sometimes I just wanted to make that clear. So he shoots me an email and he's like, hey Lee, I've been thinking a lot about this, and you know what? Like, we can help you out. And if you would want, we can bring you under VLP's umbrella. We'll you're kind of like an arm of VLP or a subsidiary or whatever you want to call it. And he would provide the intake support, the technical support, and for my part, I volunteered to just be at every clinic. So I said I'll set aside the time once a month to go to these clinics. I can help give people general legal advice, but I can also advise on tribal court matters because I've practiced in tribal court. And that's actually, when I first got out of law school, that's where I started. Is I got authorized to practice as a lay advocate in the peacemakers and court of appeals. And so like I've been to those
and that's here on Seneca, like that's the Seneca judicial system.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Yep. So I was practicing there for a while, and then I finally got licensed in New York. And then it was, about a month later, I got a call from Lippis. So I let them know that was an aside. So I let them know basically that, I kind of lost my train of thought.
Where do you hold these clinics? Like, what?
So that's where NACS comes in. So NACS is the place where we actually do the consulting. They have a couple rooms that
And what is that next?
Native American Community Services is a support service for Native Americans in like urban Native Americans.
Right.
So they have a location in Buffalo and they have one in Niagara Falls, I believe, and they provide a lot of essential services to natives who live off reservation in the city of Buffalo. And so Michael Martin there was more than happy. It actually came up at a fundraiser I saw him at, and I said, hey, I've got this crazy idea that if I want to start a legal aid clinic geared towards natives, towards serving the native community here. And I was wondering, like, if I could start it, would you be willing to let us use your space? And, he was like, for sure, if you can get it going, you can use our space. And where Lippis came in is the cost to provide the support was extremely reduced, but I had to come up with $2,500. Yeah. And so at that time, I was a new associate. I didn't have $2,500. Right. So I went and asked the managing partner and the firm, to their credit was more than willing to put up the money to get this going. And so, everything came together perfectly. It seemed like everybody was really excited about it. And, we've been in operation now for a year.
Oh, nice. How many people do you think that you've actually counseled or helped?
So I think the final tally, and we've been down for the last 2 months. So we've been doing it virtually, but I think the
Well,
final tally was
the
like
Corona-19 COVID is going on right now.
Yeah. So I think it was like 40. Maybe that's a little high. It was certainly over 30.
Right. So it's definitely worth it.
Yeah. No, for sure. I had the goal of, if I can serve or I can help one person,
right,
then it's worth all the time that I'm spending on putting this together. And, 30 doesn't sound like a lot, but the entire year preceding, before this Native American Legal Assistance Clinic, VLP served a total out of 4,000 people that they helped in that preceding year. They served a total of 17 Native Americans.
Yeah. So it's like more than, triple.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like double.
Yeah.
And
I might go check my math, but it's more than 17.
Yeah. Suffice it to say, it is more than 17. And it's I think it's growing. I'm trying to grow it some more. We've actually got interest from Disability Rights of New York to start working with us, because a lot of our clients we see, they have disability questions,
right.
And I don't practice in that area of law, and it's I hate telling people, hey, thank you for coming, but I'm going to have to direct you to this other source. Right. This way they can get some answers, and they still can get directed to the right place, because we can't represent anybody aside from the, 15, 20-minute consultation. But they basically want to help in that aspect. So, there's a lot of people who have been showing interest in it and wanting to help out, which I think is great to see, and I welcome everybody to do it. I try to get as many Native attorneys in the area to come in and just do it once a year or something.
Right.
But we've had pretty great results, and I'm happy with the way things have been going, and I look forward to continuing it in the years to come.
Definitely, man. Let's talk about some other subjects. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this billboard. I think ERW put it up. It's Justice Scalia. He says Indian law. I forget the exact quote now.
I think
we make it up as we go along.
Yeah,
or something like that.
I just saw it as I was driving in. I think.
What do you think about that? Do you think that's a true statement? Or do you think?
Yeah, I think it probably is. I mean, whether he actually said that, I don't know.
Because there's a lot of interpretation to be had on it, especially Indian law, because nothing is clear, right? Like,
yeah. No, I think that's a fair characterization of the trajectory of federal Indian laws. That a lot of times these decisions, they're not based on precedent. It's just kind of a new idea that the court adopts.
Right.
So even like you look at some of the earliest cases, like the Marshall Trilogy, which are 3 cases that were decided in the early 1815, 1820s or something like that.
Yeah.
And those are widely cited as the very first Indian law cases, the foundational Indian law cases. And you look at a case like Johnson v. McIntosh, where the court adopted the doctrine of discovery because they had to have some legal way to say that they could take native lands, or that they now own native land, so and even today, a lot of that goes on,
Yeah, definitely.
So I think like federal plenary power is, I think a creation of, is a judicial creation. I don't know where it comes from. I mean, some people may argue it's a logical outgrowth of having the United States occupy the same territory as all these Indian nations.
Right.
But there's no case that specifically said prior to the first case, there was no case that they were relying on.
Right.
Saying,
There's no
since the very dawn of human history, we've known this principle to be true. It wasn't something like that. It was more of a ad hoc decision to allow the federal government to have plenary authority over tribes. And So I do think there is some truth to that, and that billboard always kind of cracks me up when I was driving in. I was just looking at it when I was coming in, and you know, sometimes I kind of go back and forth between whether I thought Justice Scalia was a great justice of the Supreme Court, and my only criteria is how did they treat Indians. And so he had some pretty bad Indian law cases, but he also had a few good ones. It's common that people, Native people that I know in the legal profession will really gravitate towards like RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Right.
But the way I see it is she's not very friendly to Indians.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Yeah.
And so if that's your only criteria, then Justice Scalia may not have been the worst justice. Certainly he was. He was a sharp guy. I like reading his opinions because there's a little bit of humor in there. He makes for the most part logical points. But he did have some bad cases for Native. So it's double-edged sword there.
What about like tribal sovereignty? Like how much jurisdiction do you think that they actually have, the Supreme Court, any court or any other entity has over indigenous people?
So that's a loaded question. Going into this, being raised on the res and growing up here and just being a part of the community, the Seneca Nation, I think, sovereignty is always at the forefront of everybody's minds, right? And I think you would agree with that. It's a big issue here. I've been out in Indian country when I was in law school, and it wasn't such a big issue there.
Yeah.
I mean, every tribe values tribal sovereignty,
right.
But here we bang that drum a little bit harder than everybody else, and rightly so. But the concept of tribal sovereignty, I think, there's two distinct ways to think about it. So if you want to think about it in just a general sense, I think you're talking more inherent sovereignty, I think is what you're getting at, is that we exist as a government, as a people, as a nation, independent of the federal government. And, our right to exist does not come from the federal government or the state government.
Right.
It comes from the fact that we've been here, our ancestors have been here, and we've always lived this way. But the concept of the legal concept of tribal sovereignty is much more circumscribed. I mean, in those first three cases I was discussing, the Marshall trilogy, tribal sovereignty looked like it was off to a really great start. I mean, there was no state jurisdiction in Indian country. Of course, we were subject to federal domination, I guess you would say, but the states didn't really have any say in what we did on our reservations. And now, as we both know, that is not the case. That has been severely restricted, and it happened over a long period of time, and it's still happening today. For New York tribes specifically, in terms of jurisdiction, as I was talking about the doctrine of federal plenary power over Indian tribes, that what that means is basically the courts have all agreed now that the federal government exercises total authority over Indian lands. And so that's played out in the fact that the federal government has the authority to recognize tribes, that there's 573 recognized Indian nations. Last year there was fewer, so there's been some recognized in the interim, but also not only do they have the power to recognize, they have the power to destroy tribes, and that has happened before. And
that's happened recently, right?
I think some land is being taken out of trust. I don't know if they're actually like terminating the tribe, I think is what they generally call it. But that almost happened to our tribe. So there was a period of federal Indian policy where they were trying to just terminate tribes, and they were saying, you guys basically live like everybody else. There's no difference.
Right.
So you no longer exist as this separate and distinct community, and therefore we're just going to integrate you, assimilate you into the population,
Right.
and you don't need this recognition as an Indian tribe anymore. And here in New York was really, at the time, New York was really pushing for the tribes in New York State to be terminated.
Right.
And my understanding of it is, at the same time, the thruway was trying to come through our lands. And so New York State was basically saying, like, hey, let us put the thruway through,
Right.
or we're going to push to get you guys terminated.
Right.
And so, we acquiesced, and we allowed the state to put the thruway through. But also out of that, we got the what's called, it's not called, it's 25 USC 232 and 233, which are federal laws that basically give New York State criminal and civil jurisdiction over the reservation. So when you want to talk about jurisdiction, because sovereignty and jurisdiction are pretty intertwined,
Right.
States can exercise criminal jurisdiction, and they can exercise civil jurisdiction, and it's kind of their exclusive domain. There are some federal police powers, as they call them. There are some federal laws that affect the civil jurisdiction of a state, but for the most part, states are kind of left alone. Now, tribes used to have the same thing. They were allowed to exercise their own criminal jurisdiction, their own civil jurisdiction, and there's another piece. It's called regulatory jurisdiction, civil regulatory jurisdiction, if you will. So there's three types of jurisdiction that a tribe can exercise.
Okay.
And obviously, criminal jurisdiction is punishing people for committing crimes. Civil jurisdiction is more about governing relationships between people. We had a contract for you to make me 500 widgets, and you sent me 400 widgets, and 300 of them were bad, and I lost money, so I'm going to sue you. That's basic civil jurisdiction.
Right.
Regulatory jurisdiction, on the other hand, is the ability to regulate your territory. So speed limits, stop signs, zoning, taxes, things like that are all considered regulatory jurisdiction. Right. So there's been a lot of other states that have enacted laws similar to 25 USC 232 and 233. Those 232 and 233 were kind of the precursor to the name escapes me right now, and this is going to be a huge embarrassment to me. But
I can put it in the show notes.
yeah. So they're basically a precursor to other laws that were imposed in Indian country across the United States afterwards. And so a lot of states now exercise civil and criminal jurisdiction over reservations. Right. But they can't exercise regulatory jurisdiction because that would essentially destroy the tribe. So if you're not allowed to govern yourself, then you don't exist, basically. And so here in New York State, we're in this weird situation where we have our own civil courts, but we also have New York State who can exercise concurrent civil jurisdiction. They don't have exclusive. They can't come in and exclude us from exercising civil jurisdiction. They have concurrent. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they have concurrent criminal jurisdiction, but we don't have a police force, so it's de facto exclusive right now. And then regulatory jurisdiction, is being exercised all the time. And, every time council passes a new law or, does something, makes some policy change here, that's an exercise of regulatory jurisdiction. And right now, that's a lot of tribes, that's their only way to exercise their sovereignty at this point is through regulations of internal matters and things like that.
And I know here, we have deeds to our land. Like, we own our land, whereas, out west, some of the tribes, their land is just in trust.
Yeah. So there's different types of land tenures. And actually, we have what's called restricted fee land status here, which means we own the fee to our land, the title, if you will, to our land, but it's restricted in the sense that we can't sell it to anybody else. We can't sell it to non-Indians, non-Senecas. Other tribes, as you noted, have trust land or dependent Indian communities. They have a little bit different land tenure, but or Pueblos are the biggest example of that third type of land tenure. But yeah, for a lot of tribes to sign a lease or to cut down some timber, you have to go to the Department of Interior and ask permission to do so. I mean, so we have a lot of freedoms that a lot of tribes don't enjoy. Even selling your land, if I want to sell an acre of my land to you, we just come to an agreement. I sign over a quick claim deed, and it's yours. In some tribes, you have to get that approved as well. And so, we exercise a lot more, I guess, sovereignty, if you will. But it's still confined by the history of federal Indian law and also the history of our nation. And when I say nation, I mean the Seneca Nation. So it's a...
And one thing too is healthcare. Like our clinic is IHS. A lot of people use it, and they're regulated by the federal government.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of tribes here actually operate their own clinics. That's an option under the IHS model. Is that you can either have an IHS hospital, or you can run your own clinic. And a lot of times tribes can run those clinics more efficiently and effectively than the federal government. And so that's what a lot of tribes elect to do. But we still do have IHS here. I think my girlfriend works for IHS in Lockport. So it still is an entity that's in the area. But we handle our own affairs in that. So that, again, that's another, taking back control, because so much of it has been taken from us. That anytime you can regain control of even, it's not something, it's insubstantial to take control of your healthcare system. But even something like that, you got to keep making steps forward to asserting your sovereignty, exercising it. And, same thing with, trade across borders and things like that, and state borders. International borders, whatever, a lot of that is going on, and there's a lot of litigation surrounding that type of stuff, across the country, and those are things that'll be played out for the next few years. I think right now a lot of it is cigarettes. I think in the future you're going to see probably a lot more of it become cannabis related, either medical or recreational. And so those issues have yet to be decided, and it's going to be an exciting time in the future to see how those issues play out. A lot of it depends on who we have in the Oval Office, how well we will be treated on some of those, and how well we'll be supported. So we'll see.
Absolutely, man. What do you think about the future? Like, what do you want to do, personally? I know you're doing this legal clinic and everything. What's your final plan? What do you think is going to be? What do you want to do? You want to help? You want to come back? Like you said earlier, you kind of wanted to come back and help the people, right?
Yeah. Right now, as an associate with the firm, I'm trying to learn every day. I'm trying to sharpen my skills. I want to represent tribal nations at a high level.
How long have you been practicing?
I've been practicing now for 3 years.
Okay.
About 3 years. I think 2 in state court and about 9 or 10 months in tribal courts.
Okay.
So almost 3 years total. But looking ahead, I don't know. I guess I haven't given it much thought. I think just wanting to help and wanting to give back are the biggest things that I try to do. And however I can do that,
Right.
I'd be interested.
And like
in
you said,
doing
helping, even if you help one person.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And what did you say? You 40 people or something like that? You helped 40 people? That's 40, like, people, right? With families
Yep.
and everything. So definitely doing good, man.
Yeah, and it may be a little bit lower than 40. So I don't want to put that number.
We'll call
out
it 40.
Yeah,
I don't have any fact checkers working for me.
Yeah,
so
yeah. For
you can
for
say
the
whatever you
purposes
want.
of this, let's just say 50 then. Sounds better.
Where can people find it if they want this legal help?
So it's on the NACS Facebook page,
Okay.
and it's also on, I believe, the Erie County Bar Association's Volunteer Lawyers Project page puts it up. And I think those are the two places where you can find the information, the current information. And it's usually just a flyer that goes up,
Right.
and it talks about, here's the time, place, and
Okay.
date, time, and place.
And you hold these every month?
Yes, every month, every second Tuesday
Okay.
of the month, from 6 to 8 p.m. And, sometimes we go longer. Right now, because of coronavirus, we're doing it by phone,
Right.
which was, I think it's nice getting used to it. And I think to expand the clinic moving forward, we may utilize virtual consultations. I haven't cleared this with anybody. It's just kind of my own thought as to how we can reach.
That's kind of how everything is going now.
Yeah. So I think I would like to try to explore that a little bit further and see if we can serve more people that way, and maybe get those numbers up to like 100 next year.
Right.
If we could help 100 people a year, that would be a great year. So I'm looking forward to building it and to making sure that it works for people, and who knows where that'll take me. But I guess I kind of want to answer the question about where do I want to end up, and at my core, I want to be home. I want to be helping our people.
Right.
I want to be able to be involved and try to make a difference here. And so that's whatever form or shape that takes, that's it would be fine with me, even if it's not in the law,
right.
even if it's working in some other capacity, as long as it's in service of the nation and our people, I'm all for it. So that's kind of where I want to end up. But who knows where this life will take us. If you would asked me 10 years ago if I thought I would be an attorney, I would have laughed at you. But here I am sitting here today,
right.
and I've come a long way, and so I'm just doing the best I can.
If anybody wants to get a hold of you, how can they get a hold of you?
So they can call me, or email me. I'm on Facebook as well.
Right. I'll put your email up.
Yeah, put my email up if anybody needs any help out there. There's a lot of things going on in Indian country right now that I think certainly legal assistance is required.
Right. And we've only been here 40 minutes, and we only just touched on the surface. So
and I hope you'll invite me back.
Definitely,
and I'd be happy to do these, on a fairly regular basis. Maybe we can do some live ones and get some questions in, because I will, make this infinitely more interesting than just listening to me talk. So I'm hoping that we can do something live and get some people, because it would be nice to see what other people are thinking. And I think the 10-minute discussion of tribal sovereignty was not enough. We should definitely explore that a little bit more.
Absolutely.
Current issues, anything you want to talk about or anybody wants to hear, I'd be happy to share my opinion and thoughts on that.
All right, man. Thanks for coming in.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.